Hello and welcome to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Last week, we discussed the monumental and ambitious exhibitions in Southern California that were presented during the last 6 months of the year under the umbrella of PST LA, which stands for Pacific Standard Time, Latin America, Los Angeles. The Getty Foundation made $16 million in grants available to participating institutions, following up on the highly influential Pacific Standard Time exhibitions from 6 years ago. And what was so influential about this 6 years ago is that it gave credibility, definition, and worldwide attention to the art scene in Southern California. Since that time, the art scene in Los Angeles and the surrounding area has just pretty much blown apart, burst on the scene, and there are new artists, trends, activity at all levels. In last week's Art Ambassador Radio Show, I spoke with two museum administrators whose institutions participated in the PST LA exhibits, as they are called. And we talked about the far-reaching implications of the over 60 exhibitions that were presented throughout the region. Today, my two guests are gallery owners from Southern California, Jack Rutberg of Jack Rutberg Fine Art in Los Angeles, and Peter Blake of the Peter Blake Gallery in Laguna Beach. Each of these gallery owners responded to the call of Pacific Standard Time, LA, with important presentations of art exhibits in their galleries. Albeit they did it in very different ways. And we're going to be talking to them today about that phenomenon and how they responded to it. I'd like to start by introducing my first guest, Jack Rutberg. Jack is the owner and founder of Jack Rutberg Fine Art. He has been an art dealer, a curator, and consultant for more than 40 years, representing a wide range of important American, Latin American, and European modern and contemporary artists. His gallery is known for his impressive stable of artists, both from Los Angeles and internationally. Artists such as Hans Burkhardt, Patrick Graham, and Ruth Weisberg. In addition, he regularly puts on exhibits that have an art historical and curatorial strength, providing scholarship to important artworks and creating a context within which to view and collect art. At Jack's gallery, you can always see a major work of art, something you hadn't expected, and you come away satisfied. I'm pleased to have him on my show today. Welcome, Jack.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Jack, your gallery interpreted the topic of LA in the PST exhibition by looking directly to the relationship that artists, primarily Mexican or Latin American artists, have had with your city, the city of Los Angeles. You mounted a number of exhibitions. You really took this seriously. Can you give us an overview of what you were thinking and how this played out in your program?
Indeed. I'm very proud of what we presented, and I think in some respects maybe we misread what the Getty's intention was here. You know, given the fact that we are hosting Latin America, there had to be a reason why we're doing it. And of course, California, and Southern California especially, has a profound history with Latin America, and very specifically Mexico. And my interest was in presenting art, be they Latin American artists or Los Angeles artists, those artists that contextualized why we are doing Pacific Standard Time Our first exhibition was an exhibition of 10 10 Mexican artists. It included people like Diego Rivera, Tamayo, Siqueiros, Zúñiga, et cetera, et cetera. Each artist had a profound impact on Los Angeles, worked here, or was impacted by the city. And what I'm a little bit disappointed in the approach to Pacific Standard Time was that our institutions, particularly our key institutions, the Getty and LACMA, who are encyclopedic in their nature, did not approach the subject with this kind of context. And we did.
And you really included so many of the major Mexican artists. I had no idea, honestly, that their relationship to Los Angeles was so deep felt. And your show and your documentation really brought that forward, which is significant.
Well, when you consider the fact that people like David Alfaro Sequeiros created a mural here, had a very early exhibition, solo exhibition. Orozco did murals in Los Angeles. And the very founder of the school that opened up murals, Alfredo Ramos Martinez, came to Los Angeles and lived much of his adult life, his mature life in L.A. And we can boast remarkable frescoes from Santa Barbara all the way to San Diego, and for our institutions not to feature this for generations of young artists and aspiring collectors, I found to be rather staggering. And I'm very proud of the fact that we did it. Perhaps we misread the mission of the whole endeavor, but the reality is I think our contribution was probably, for my money, the most consequential. And we
I think
followed...
it was...
Go ahead,
I think
sorry.
it was I think it was very important. And it also not only shows the history of the relationship with Mexico, which those of us who have grown up in California know that we were part of Mexico up until almost fairly recent times, maybe 150 years ago.
1848, I believe, is when we separated. And to put that in perspective, that's, the invention of the camera. The Impressionists were in their salad days at the time. I mean, we're not talking about ancient history. This is modern history that's evolved.
Well, the interesting thing, too, is that with the topic of Mexican and Latin American peoples being integrated so much into the culture, that a lot of people think that it's just happened in the last 20 or 30 years. And this is also not true when you take a look at the deep history and the relationships of the artists that you brought out in your exhibitions. So I salute you for doing that. So tell us what else you had as part of your response to PST Lala.
Well, a couple of the exhibitions, and a very major one in my mind, was the works of Hans Burckhardt, who I personally regard as one of the great artists of the 20th century. Mexico was the Côte d'Azur of America. It was our closest foreign border, tropical and exotic, and in a completely different culture. And before the Jet Age in particular, this was a place that artists went to, and many American moderns from both coasts went to Mexico City, which was a very sophisticated place at the same time of its kind of a more archaic sort of history as well. So Hans Burckhardt, who was a Los Angeles-based painter, went to Mexico, spent nearly a decade back and forth, many museum exhibitions, was probably more exhibited than any artist in Los Angeles history before 1980. And we presented an extraordinary body of work, just keying upon the works that he did in Mexico. That was followed by what we are now presenting, and that is two major exhibitions. One is Rico Lebrun, who was Burckhardt's counterpart. Rico Lebrun in the 40s, 50s, and until his death in the 60s, in 1964, was perhaps the most talked about artist in all of America. He too went to Mexico, and Mexico was the catalyst for a tremendous breakthrough in his body of work. And
this is fascinating information to bring to light, and we're going to be talking more about the exhibitions that Jack Rutberg had in his gallery for PST Lala when we return from our break. This is Gwenda Joyce, the host of the Art Ambassador Radio Show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We'll be back for more. Hello, and welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and I'm speaking today with Jack Rutberg of the Rutberg Fine Art Gallery in Los Angeles. Jack, you were talking about the exhibitions that you hosted for PST Lala, one with a fabulous artist who is not really as well known as he might be, Rico Lebrun. He's an abstract expressionist who also includes many figurative references in his work. Tell us about that show and why it was important to you to put it on in your gallery.
Well, when we considered Rico Lebrun, we thought about Los Angeles artists who had the greatest impact, not only on Mexico, but from Mexico in Los Angeles and the rest of the country. And Rico Lebrun, it may shock your audience, it's really a rather staggering thing to realize that an artist who is as widely exhibited and known as Rico Lebrun was in his lifetime could be somehow marginalized. And the documentation is there, hundreds of exhibitions, hundreds of books, et cetera, et cetera. But Los Angeles and the word history sometimes don't fit in the same sentence, and we're not very good at that. But with Rico Lebrun, who had already created major murals and frescoes, he had an impact on a new generation of artists in Mexico. But Mexico catalyzed his work as he broke free from some of the early influences in his own work and essentially took a new direction and truly was remarkably exhibited in Los Angeles. In 1967, there was an exhibition that the Los Angeles County Museum organized, traveled 6 museums, including the National Collection in Washington, D.C., and the Bellas Artes Museum in Mexico City, as well as 4 other institutions. So
that's
it gives
astounding.
you an idea. Yeah, it's truly remarkable. History is right there hiding in plain sight. Now, in tandem with Rico Lebrun, which is a powerful but poignant exhibition, is a show of an artist not as obscure perhaps, but truly deserving of greater context, and that's Francisco Zúñiga. You know, if this is the year of women, then we have to address the fact that Francisco Zúñiga, in contrast to virtually every artist that I can think of, celebrated women for their power, for their poignancy, for the stoic, knowing qualities, maternity. But these were not mythologized. This was a man who celebrated the indigenous figure. And Francisco Zúñiga can be cited as the most important sculptor of the 20th century of Latin America. And frankly, I think he has transcended those definitions of regionalism as he stands as one of the major artists of the 20th century, internationally for that matter. So we have the 2 exhibitions concurrent, and I'm very proud of them because we're in an age of a great deal of challenges where a great deal of art has to do more with protest, but frankly, gravitas and aesthetics are the most perhaps inspiring works that cause reflection and above all bring beauty to our lives. So I'm delighted to be able to stand here and look around this gallery and see works of remarkable integrity from both artists.
Well, I do agree with you that gravitas and aesthetics are timeless, and they are the ultimate measure of how we look at art. And in a time where pretty much all the conventions and the strains and themes of art have just sort of fallen away, and it's become a time where anything goes aesthetically. I think you make a really good point about how staying with those traditional, time-tested aesthetic decisions and representations is really important. Jack, can you maybe expound on that a little bit and Is this something that you consider deeply when you're considering the gallery artists who you show and the works of art that you present?
I think it's very hard to know, to define what I do in terms of how I choose art and exhibitions. It was a dear friend, Vincent Price, the great actor, who was a remarkable collector and art historian. He flipped the expression on its ear when he wrote a book saying, "I know about art, but I don't know what I like." And I'd have to say that is indeed what drives me. What I do know is I'm seduced by history, and when I speak to history, I'm also addressing contemporary art. Without context, contemporary art is meaningless. And what's exciting about it all is this remarkable continuum that we get to partake in, somehow kind of borrow a little bit of immortality, knowing that we're kind of on the road to this very long process. A lot of art is made today where artists don't even use the word art. They talk about their research, they talk about there's another buzzword which escapes me for the moment, but it's amazing to me that without addressing that continuum, an artist has no responsibility somehow. And in the end, they have a responsibility to themselves first, but it's much more than a selfie experience. And that's sadly what a great deal of what I see today is that selfie experience.
That historical context is so important, and we're going to be talking more about that after we take a break. This is Gwenda Joyce, the host of the Art Ambassador Radio Show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We have more to. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm here with Jack Rutberg of Jack Rutberg Fine Art, and we are talking about the exhibitions that he mounted in his gallery during the Pacific Standard Time La presentation of the last 6 months. So, Jack, it's wonderful to hear about the exhibitions you've had with Rico Lebrun, Hans Burkhardt, Francisco Zuniga, and the other Mexican master artists who've had this critical and maybe not so well-known relationship between Los Angeles and and Mexico and other parts of Latin America. As you had these exhibits on in your gallery, tell us a little bit what it's been like for you and for the audience who's come through. I imagine that giving this historical context of such major works of art and such important stories art historically has really been eye-opening for them. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. And it's been eye-opening for me, too. One of the joys of doing an exhibition is that you readdress what you know, you recontextualize it, and you get to share and discover new things, not only about the work, but history itself. But I would tell you, and the reason I was so disappointed with the museums is so exemplified in an experience. I remember a young couple, they are both artists, I would say maybe about 30 years of age, came in and they're reading the biography on the wall, and next to the biography, the heading said, David Alfaro Siqueiros in Los Angeles. This is what I wrote at the top of each artist, in Los Angeles. And I hear them say to each other, wow, he was here. He taught here. I mean, here was Siqueiros who did 2 murals that I know of in Los Angeles alone, and he taught at Chenard. He had solo exhibitions here at 2 galleries simultaneously. And here it is coming into a gallery, and I said to them, you're artists, aren't you? And I asked them where they had trained, and they said, here in Los Angeles. And I asked them, well, don't you feel cheated out of your own legacy? That you cannot stand on the shoulders of those that preceded you, as artists. And they were rather taken aback because they had never considered such prospects. So I felt very fulfilled in the fact of having expanded their awareness, and I would dare say thousands of people that have come between these four exhibitions. The Hans Burkhardt Show was a revelation. Our current Rico Lebrun exhibition is a revelation, even to the good 100 or so artists that it must have been here who, in fact, worshipped Rico Lebrun but didn't know about the scale of these paintings and their brilliant colors, which read almost like stained glass windows. And one of the reasons is because books that were published in the 50s and early 60s mostly were in black and white anyway.
And the works that you have in your show are really quite large.
Yes, they're monumental in scale. One is 10 feet tall. 10 feet tall. Most people know Rico Lebrun as being perhaps the greatest draftsman of his epoch, and black and white drawings prevailed. So, and the Zuniga exhibition brings forth the entire body of work in a sense, because we have works here monumental in scale, in bronze. We have the rarest of works by Zuniga carved in wood, of which he only did a few, and stone, and then magnificent drawings. So one can really come in and have an experience that is not only edifying, but expansive for all of us. And we are dependent on the audience coming in, because it's the public that sustains history. The institutions are critical, but the institutions cannot exist without a knowing and interested audience.
Well, this is really a museum quality work that you're putting on in a private gallery, and you make it accessible to anyone who wants to come and enjoy the work with no fee. And you are presenting museum quality work. And I hope that you are also attracting people and educating them in a way to recognize that these works are accessible to them, for them to actually purchase, collect, and live with. And are you seeing that translating into some ownership on the part of the audience?
Well, we live in hope, and of course there are always those patrons that want to be expansive in their acquisition. I think that we're all looking for younger people, not only to discover art, but to discover that they are part of this equation. As I said, institutions cannot survive without a public, but a public can't be left out. And the tragedy today is sensation grabs all the attention. All the media goes to $1 million and more pictures that come up at auction and what have you. And tragically, an awful lot of people think that being a part of this, being a collector, is something for other people. There's no greater privilege than living with charged objects in your home, in your environment. It's the thing that makes us rewarded, frankly, just as nature does. And
I think that's always been the case, and it is really true that this kind of artwork that has meaning and depth and adds such quality and value to your life can be acquired and can be lived with.
Indeed.
So, Jack, what would you say as we are about to wrap up this part of the conversation? Where would you like to see this go from here? This is a major presentation. How would you like it to play out in the future? What's your dream vision?
Well, I would hope that curators would, of institutions, would see what we are doing, and all of the galleries, and that it catalyze their curiosity and their interest. By the way, we have done videos that are on YouTube and Vimeo, and literally tens of thousands of people see those videos. And we're just hoping that the one serves as a catalyst in the same way that when I first stumbled upon the remarkable attributes of looking and owning art.
Well, the videos are wonderful, and I do want to direct everyone to the jackrutbergfineart.com website, because they are also available with links on Jack's website from his gallery. So do a little research and enjoy the depth of information that the Jack Rutberg Gallery provides for you. It's meaty, it's wonderful. Jack, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. And I encourage everyone to visit these exhibitions if you are in and around Los Angeles. This is Gwenda Joyce, the host of the Art Ambassador radio show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We have another guest and more art. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Today we're talking with two gallery owners who have participated in exhibitions as part of the Pacific Standard Time outlook on art in Southern California. And my second guest today is Peter Blake of the Peter Blake Gallery in Laguna Beach. Peter Blake opened his gallery in 1993 and has focused much of the gallery direction on the artists of the movements that are indigenous to Southern California, the California minimalism movement, with a focus on hard edge and light and space paintings and sculpture. His gallery is based in Laguna Beach, and it's the longest running gallery showing California light and space art. He brings his artwork to different regions of the country by exhibiting regularly at the major art fairs, the New York Armory Show, Expo Chicago, the Dallas Art Fair, and today he just has returned from the Palm Springs Art Fair, where he was exhibiting over the weekend. And I thank him for joining us on the show today. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Peter, your gallery was part of the first Pacific Standard Time exhibition years ago, 6 years ago now. And I understand that exhibition and the entire PST program had a significant effect on your gallery and your ability to garner the attention of collectors of art in the light and space movement. Artists such as Larry Bell, Peter Alexander, and Dwayne Valentine, artists who many of us in California are very familiar with, but now are taking on a more historical approach as their work becomes known as being influential, but not necessarily of the moment. Tell us how Pacific Standard Time, in your experience, changed the focus for you and for your gallery.
Well, Pacific Standard Time, it brought to attention all over the world these great artists that we had been working with for years and that we had all gotten to know here in California. And they suddenly had a voice in London, in Paris, in New York. And it was two things that happened. First, it was the PST, and then there was a show at David's Werner Gallery called Primary Atmospheres. And between those two, it opened the world's eyes to what all of us had known for so long here in Southern California. And by doing so, suddenly collectors were interested in acquiring these works. Curators were interested in curating shows that had these artists or that were based on the fundamentals of light and space or hard edge. It was a really incredible situation that took place that once again opened the doors for a lot of these artists to go out and start showing in England and in Paris and different places that the artwork had never really been seen before or had been shown, but it had never taken shape.
For many people who may not be really familiar with this movement, tell us about what's distinctive about it.
Well, in the 60s and 70s, artists here in Southern California kind of threw away the brush mentality, and they weren't interested in painting people or painting trees. They were using materials that were very different and came from some of their interests, like the resin from the surfboards, car paint. They were car buffs. So they started to kind of work with different materials that would actually capture this glorious Southern California light that we all know of. It's a beautiful white light that's very indigenous to Southern California. and these artists were starting to figure out how to capture it and have it kind of go through these translucent resins, how to shimmer off of metal or car paint, how to shift in terms of color when light either moved around it or the viewer moved around the actual object.
Hello, we seem to be gone.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh. So, Peter, this is the kind of light that draws so many artists who want to come and move to California and make art and live here. And it has been really important in attracting different generations of artists. So how has this aesthetic evolved over the years with, since the 60s as new generations of artists are responding to the light and the space and these fabulous materials that are not conventional historically, but they're still very much in use?
Well, we have such a rich tradition of all of these materials and all of these artists going back to the early California with the plein air painters, the California Impressionists. So it progressed into a different group of artists who use different materials, resin and car paint and metal and plastics and acrylics. But over the years, it seems to have kind of joined where you have artists like Mary Weatherford, who's actually painting on canvas and then inserting a neon or fluorescent tube onto the painting surface. So you're kind of seeing this totally open approach towards making art and addressing the California light, where before it might have started as painting and then for the light and space artists had transferred over to just purely acrylic. But now you have the marrying of these mediums where painters are painting with paints that have pearlescent powders in them, like guys like Jimmy Gleason who are working with iridescent paints that as you move around them they shift colors. So they're kind of taking these materials and now they're bringing them back to canvas. And unlike some of either the early California artists who were dead set on painting on canvas and painting the majestic landscape, now you have these artists who are actually combining both the principles of light and space and some of those materials with canvas and with traditional painting.
Now, this is a fascinating topic, and it's much broader than you might think. And you have defined this as the basis of your gallery's aesthetic, and you've been able to attract enough collectors to this type of artwork. Is that correct?
I've been doing this for 25 years, and the gallery business gives you about 2 months before it kicks you to the curb. So, yes, I have. It has taken me to go out on the road and go and attend these art fairs that you mentioned. So we are finding collectors from all over the world that attend the fairs. I couldn't have, I'm not sure, but I couldn't have survived just having a gallery in Laguna Beach showing light and space minimalism, or minimalism for that matter.
This is fascinating, and I'm so glad that you're here to talk with us today on the Art Ambassador radio show, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're here with Peter Blake of the Peter Blake Gallery. Stay with us. We're going to take a short break. Hello and welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and I'm here today with Peter Blake of the Peter Blake Gallery, and we're talking about the influence in Southern California and worldwide of the major push towards exhibiting art that is in the theme of Pacific Standard Time, created in and around Los Angeles and Southern California. And Peter Blake is the owner of a gallery that represents one of my favorite artists, Lita Albuquerque. And I followed Peter's gallery due to his interest in exhibiting artists of the light and space movement and direction. And I've also noticed, Peter, that in the last couple of years, you've kind of made a big shift in the direction of the gallery and moved into the area of design and furniture. This is a fascinating development, and I'd love to hear how this evolved for your gallery.
It was purely by accident. My wife and I collect design. And we, over the years, have just built a small but nice collection of furniture from Bauhaus all the way through 70s French. And summer was coming along last year, and here in Laguna, we usually have our visitors that come into Laguna in August, or July and August, are usually here looking for whales and some of the funner types of art. And we don't have much of an audience for the minimalism that we normally show. And we thought it might be nice to actually have an exhibit that focused on some of the design that we collected, in the hopes that we could also show some of our clients this great passion that we had found over the years. And we opened the show. It was called Tendency of the Moment, Bauhaus Through Modern. And it was a survey of some of the quintessential designs from the 30s all the way through the 70s, or early 70s. And the show was actually a huge hit, not financially, but in terms of just people really interested in it. A lot of our clients came to see the show. They saw they saw chairs, they saw tables, they saw functional objects on pedestals. And they were kind of genuinely intrigued by the whole the way we had installed it and displayed it, and they were kind of confused at the same time, wondering if we'd gotten into the furniture business or what exactly we were up to. And it was a matter of explaining to them, just like in 1993 when we opened a gallery, and had to start educating people on the beauty of collecting art, as opposed to just kind of decorating with it. And we had to start all over with design and explain to people that for the same price that you could go to a furniture store, and a good furniture store like Minotti or Roche-Beaubois or some of the higher end furniture stores, you could actually buy a chair or a table or a sofa or a lighting fixture that actually had 50 years of history. And had provenance, and was more than likely going to retain its value, and in many cases move up in value. And we kind of got started with that show, and since then we've had 2 or 3 more shows, and we've learned that there's great interest in collecting design, and there's also great interest in seeing collectible design with fine art, and how those two merge together beautifully. And the collectible design that we're interested in has a very cohesive thread with the artwork that we deal in. It's not it's very kind of minimal in its own way. It doesn't have a lot of ornamentation, but yet it's still very, very beautiful, and in some cases very sexy.
Now, as I understand, you have learned and tried out different ways of presenting these two things together, the furniture and the fine art. And you have experimented with different ways of presenting it at the Dallas Art Fair versus the Palm Springs Modernism Art Fair. Tell us about the different ways of showing it and how that can relate to audience appreciation.
Well, in the case of Tendency of the Moment, our first show, we laid out all of the furniture, and then we brought in all of the art, and it was instantaneous. As soon as we put up the art, the design now suddenly seemed like furniture, and we didn't want that to happen. So first, we eliminated the art, and then we had pedestals built, and we brought everything up off of the floor and highlighted it like a piece of sculpture. And we thought it was a very effective way of displaying the design. When we were approached to do the Dallas Fair again, the director suggested that we curate a show of design and art. And I was very hesitant to do that. I didn't want to mix the two together. Also, there's a lot of, here in the States, we haven't quite moved forward like they have in Europe in terms of that art and design are one, and quality fine art or quality collectible design are pretty much at the same level. Here, we still kind of live by these 3 different levels where you have art, architecture, and design. So in Dallas, he really wanted us to show artwork and design, and we went ahead and did it despite our apprehension. And it turned out to be a really great show, but we also had the artwork. We had the artwork on the walls, but then we had the furniture on pedestals. And it still very much felt like an exhibit. When we started to get ready for our booth in Palm Springs recently, we were dealing with a week in Palm Springs where everyone comes out for modernism. And these are people who are interested in architecture, they're interested in mid-century modern, furniture, all these different facets of that time of the United States, this great time that we had. And we decided to go ahead and exhibit it in a very different way, which was to not have the furniture on pedestals, but have the artwork up. And it turned out to be very effective in its own right because it felt more like an apartment of a collector.
Well, I think that context, again, and the way of exhibiting the artwork certainly does bring in a different attitude on the part of the viewer. This is fascinating to talk about with Peter Blake of the Peter Blake Gallery. I am Gwenda Joyce, your host of the Art Ambassador radio show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We have more to come. This is Gwenda Joyce, the host of the Art Ambassador radio show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And I am here with Peter Blake of the Peter Blake Gallery. And Peter's direction in his gallery has moved and shifted to incorporate design. And Peter, you have a wonderful exhibit on right now, curated by Ulysses Dusanti. And this is Brazilian design. Tell us about the focus of this exhibit.
Well, the exhibit is about Brazilian design from the 50s and 60s, and there were several items in our collection that were from Brazil that I really, really loved, and I started to really get interested in Brazilian design and started to study it, and I ran across a great exhibit that Ulysses Dusanti had here in Los Angeles, and I contacted him, and ironically, we both had a sense of love for minimalism and Brazilian design. His husband is the senior director of Hauser Wirth, and we had great conversations regarding both minimalism, Larry Bell, and furniture. And we had this great moment where we decided that it would be a great idea to curate a show here at the gallery based on Brazilian design.
So you really have shifted the direction to incorporate design, and I think it's just a wonderful pairing. Where do you see that you would like this to go from here, Peter?
Well, I'm just enjoying it so much, and we're enjoying these different aspects of design and how it fits in with fine art. We are on our way right now to the Armory in New York in early March, where we're having a solo exhibit at the Armory for one of our light and space artists, Fred Eversley. But then we're also doing a fair called Collective Design, which is a very high-end design-based fair. And it's the first time we're doing an actual fair that is based on design. Up until now, we've done fine art fairs and incorporated design, but now we're doing a design fair. And I've already seen where the actual work that we're bringing with us is very different. It feels more design oriented. I would call it high style. A lot of the fabrics, we're actually working with different fabrics. We have a tendency to work with white or black leather because we don't like a lot of decoration or ornamentation. But for the Collective Design Fair, we're actually starting to work with some more interesting fabrics and some more interesting finishes, and even some of the furniture is less hard edge and less minimal and is more decorative. So it's kind of an expansion of the design thing that we've grown to love and show here at the gallery.
Well, as you all are hearing, you are hearing the commitment and the passion of these gallery owners, and I want to thank Jack Rutberg and Peter Blake for being here today and sharing with us how you think about what you want to exhibit in your gallery and how you take ownership in a way and an interest in educating and presenting the finest of the art and the design, and presenting it in a way that is a really good context for the viewer to appreciate it, to appreciate the aesthetics, to learn about it, and to open our eyes to new things and new trends. I am very much in favor of galleries and what galleries do, and I think in some ways they're a well-kept secret. I have a personal connection, of course, in that I was a gallery owner myself for over 20 years. For those of you who are collectors or potential collectors, galleries and gallery owners are a wonderful resource. And I encourage you to use their galleries and the dealers as resources to inform you and to educate you as to what to collect. Now, if you're an artist and you're listening to this program today and you have not considered seriously working with a gallery, I hope you now have a deeper understanding about how a gallery can develop an audience for your artwork. And as an artist, you may need some guidance with that as well to find the right gallery for your art. This is one area that I specialize in. This year alone, I've been privileged to find galleries for 3 artists. And if it is something that interests you, I invite you to apply on my website, artambassador.net. This is Gwenda Joyce, the host of the Art Ambassador radio show on BBM Global Network. We will see you next week. I look forward to it.